If you want to create a great experience for your customers, then you better create a great experience for your employees. You need to give them roles to play. You need to help them characterize those roles and then let them perform it on your business stage to get them to become the employees you need, as well as the people they want to become, right, as workers and in their lives.
Welcome to the Work for Humans podcast. This is Dart Lindsley. Joe Pine was the first to identify many of the trends that have animated business over the last 2 decades. One was the trend away from simple mass production toward mass customization, and the other was the emergence of the experience economy. I wanted to have Joe on the show to talk about how those trends are influencing the future of work and how companies might mass customize experiences for employees. Joe's an author, speaker, management advisor to Fortune 500 companies and startups. He previously served as a visiting scholar at the MIT Design Lab, as a professor at Duke University, as a manager at IBM, and he is a co-founder of Strategic Horizons LLP. Joe and I discuss his recently updated and extended edition of the experience economy, why he extended those ideas to now include what he calls the transformation economy, the management style needed to create a high margin value for customers, brand authenticity, how to revitalize flagging companies, why companies that don't compete on value end up having to compete on price, and the importance of company exploration and innovation, and other topics. Okay, if you enjoy this episode, please subscribe to Work for Humans wherever you listen to podcasts. Your support moves this podcast forward, and I do appreciate it. And now, my conversation with Joe Pine. Joe Pine, welcome to Work for Humans.
Thanks, Dart. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
This is the first time I've really engaged deeply with your work, which is weird because I have felt like I've known about your work forever. And there were a lot of surprises for me in it. And so the two things I dug most deeply into were mass customization, the book, and the experience economy. But I also dipped into some of the other ones around authenticity and other pieces. And I'll tell you what surprised me. First of all, I didn't know what I was in for. I think each of those books could be a graduate course. They are deep, they're well-researched, they're interesting. And the other thing that I didn't know is when they were written, because those two concepts were so important to the last 20 years that I thought that those books were descriptive of mass customization and descriptive of things that were happening. But the truth is, they were written early enough that they were predictive of that. I think where I want to start is with the experience economy. And it's partially because you just recently released a new version of that book with some additional material. So for people who haven't been exposed to that, what is the experience economy? And in particular, what's the progression of economic value that you describe and what drives us down it?
The progression of economic value is the core framework of the experience economy. It's like the mother of all frameworks to a degree, because I believe it explains macroeconomically what the change in business competition has been for millennia. It starts with the agrarian economy, where people grew produce and raised animals and farmed and extracted minerals, right? All that stuff that has to do with taking stuff out of the land and so forth. And the commodities were the basis of the agrarian economy, right? We still have commodities today, but if you go back, let's say to the year 1776, the percent of people that were employed on farms in this country was over 90%, if you can imagine that, right? Over 90% of people employed were on farms. And today it's less than 2%, right? Going down to 1%. Why? Because of technological and productivity improvements that allows us to produce more and more output with fewer and fewer people. So people moved out of farms and into factories, where we created the industrial economy based off goods, the physical, tangible things that we touch and feel. And 100 years ago, when Henry Ford put together the system of mass production in 1913, over 40% of the people were still on farms, and another 40% of the people were in manufacturing. They made things with their hands, and today that percent is going well below 10 to below 8%. You've got less than 10% of the people, right, in commodities and goods. That's emblematic of the shift in the latter half of the 20th century to the service economy, where services became the predominant economic offering, taking over from goods, which supplanted commodities. And in the service economy, one of the things that happens is that goods become commoditized, mean, they're treated like a commodity where people don't care who makes them. They don't care about the brand, or the features are all pretty much the same anyway. They come to care about three things and three things only, and that's price, price, and price. Right? That's when your goods have been commoditized. So that's why manufacturers moved into services, whether they're leasing, as my old employer, IBM, did a big job in the 80s and 90s of moving from selling to leasing, financing, or warranty, service, repair, and other services. And what happened eventually is that services became commoditized as well. Long distance telephone service sold on price, 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 and fast food restaurants with all their value pricing. So it became time for service companies to move to a new level of economic value, and that is experiences. Now, the most important thing to understand about experiences is that they are a distinct economic offering, as distinct from services as services are from goods. It's basically you use goods as props and services as the stage to engage each and every individual in an inherently personal way. Right? You can create that memory. The memory is the hallmark of the experience. So what's happened is, and I originally came up with this, actually in early 1994, I think it was. We published the book originally in 1999. I don't think it was a futurist book. I always say I'm not a futurist. I don't tell you what's going to happen. I tell you what is happening. You just don't see it yet. That's the thing. And once you see it, once your eyes are open, then you see it everywhere. You see exactly how this is going on. I used to have to argue with people that we're shifting into an experience economy, and now I just say it, and most everybody just gets it. That we're in, and today we're in an experience economy. Experiences have become the predominant economic offering, and goods and services have commoditized. I'll mention just one more thing that I'm increasingly focused on to complete the progression of economic value. I don't know if you want to get into it at all, but there is one more offering. There's one more offering where you use experiences as the raw material to guide people to change, to help them achieve their aspirations. And I call that a transformation. So a transformation, like any business, is in the business of being healthy, wealthy, and wise, right? People are coming to you, said, I have an aspiration, make me healthier, make me wealthier, make me wiser, contribute to my health and well-being, my wealth and prosperity, and my wisdom and understanding. Then they're looking for a transformation. And increasingly what we see, like with transformational travel, is that many experiences are moving in that direction, particularly post-COVID, to being meaningful and even transformative. So that's the progression of economic value, 5 economic offerings. One other thing I'll mention, since you brought up mass customization too, is like it's got these 3 dynamics: the dynamic of shifting up, the dynamic of commoditization, which brings you down, right? Goods be commoditized, services commoditized, even experiences be commoditized. And then the dynamic of customization, which lifts you up. And it is how I originally discovered it, recognizing that mass customization automatically turns a good into a service. So what happens when you customize a service, it turns into an experience. What happens when you customize an experience? It can turn into a transformation. So that's the full progression of economic value writ large in just a couple minutes.
And so I imagine a 2x2. And I imagine a 2x2 where one axis is mass customization. It starts with from mass production, which is all about uniform goods, maybe uniform services, and goes toward more and more bespoke solutions. And I see this other axis, which is toward experience and ultimately toward transformation. And a lot of the discussions that I am in about work is that we want work to land in the upper right-hand corner. We want it to be both an experience that's transformative and customized. And so I want to see if the trends that you have seen in sort of the traditional market for products and services to experience, if we see some of it in the experience of work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've long said that if you want to create a great experience for your customers, then you better create a great experience for your employees. You need to give them the wherewithal to be able to stage that experience. And in particular, the original subtitle of the book, when it first came out in 1999, and it is amazing, like 25 years later, almost, we're still selling copies and people are still discovering it. But the original subtitle was Work is Theater and Every Business is Stage. And we mean that literally. It's not a metaphor, work as theater. It is a model. Work is theater, that when you're in front of customers and you're staging experience, then your work is theater. You need to engage the customer, the audience of that performance that you're doing. And so one of the key things with work in the experience economy is you need to direct your workers to act. You need to give them roles to play. You need to help them characterize those roles, let them rehearse even, and then let them perform it on your business stage. So a lot of it As giving them the wherewithal means that you enable them to act. And that's what a lot of companies don't understand. But even beside that, particularly in today's world, you need, even if you're not staging experiences, you need to create a great employee experience and even a transformative employee experience to get them to become the employees you need, as well as the people they want to become, right, as workers and in their lives.
Let's talk about the boundary between experience and transformation. One of the things you said, I think it was in the most recent version of the experience economy, is that you can tell that there's something going on when people are buying a product that's uncomfortable, that's hard work. They're buying a gym where they want to be really, uncomfortable because it's transformative. So what's that threshold between experience and transformation?
No pain, no gain is the issue with those. So all these economic shifts. There's no hard and fast, bright black line that says, okay, now you're the other than what you charge for. As a company, you are what you charge for. If you charge for undifferentiated stuff, you're in the commodities business. If you charge for tangible things, you're in the goods business. If you charge for the activities your people perform, you're in the services business. And economically, you're in the experience if and only if you charge for time, because that's what they're buying from you is time well spent. That's what they want. And so you charge an admission fee or a membership fee or a per play fee, like with a slot machine, and all these ways. And one of the amazing things we've seen over the last 20, 25 years is how many companies, including manufacturers, have got into the admission charging business and charge for experiences. With transformations, it is charging for outcomes, because that's what your customer wants, is they have an outcome, and you charge for the demonstrated outcome that they achieve. There's many different ways to do that as well. So that's the only sort of bright line between them, because what also happens in any one of these economic shifts is people always give away the next level of value to better sell what they have today. So you go to a Starbucks, which talks about being the third place and wants to have that experience that brings you in, but they're still charging for the coffee, right? They haven't figured out, that, hey, you should create, in their case, they should create a membership club that you belong to that lowers the cost of the coffee, but you're paying long-term for that membership. In the same way, a lot of experienced stagers give away transformations in the sense that they don't capture the value that they are creating with customers. So one thing, Dart, is that we recognize we only ever change through experiences, right? Period. As the saying goes, we're all the product of our experiences. And so many experiences have often been transformative for somebody, but it wasn't necessarily designed to be. It wasn't necessarily expected to be, but it happens. I remember speaking once many years ago with the American Association of Museums, and most of the people in the audience were curators. And I asked, when I got to the transformation part, I asked a simple question. I said, raise your hand if you're here in this audience today, if you're a curator museum because of some particular museum experience that happened to you as a kid. And almost half the hands went up. Wasn't intended, but they were transformed. There was a point that they went to a museum. They were so wowed by it. They say, this is what I want to do, right? This is what I want to be when I grow up. As we used to say, okay, what do you want to be when you grow up? Is the quintessential transformation question. So many experiences will transform even if they're not intended to, or you don't go and expect it. That's a lot of the cases with transformational travel. I often quote Jeffrey Kotler in his book, Travel That Can Change Your Life. And he talks about how when we travel is when we're most open to change. We get out of our daily routines. And even if we're not expecting something, that we get awe, they get in awe at something, and it changes who we are, what we think about, our values, changes the society in which we go in, and so forth. So there is this non-bright line between experiences and transformations. But if you know that if you have an aspiration, if the experienced stager knows what that aspiration is and can customize then what they're doing to you based on what you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to become, that's when the chances of a transformation can greatly increase. And when you can charge for it, even though you can never guarantee a transformation, even though some companies offer transformation guarantees, you in fact can't guarantee a transformation because you're not doing the transforming, they are. The customer is the product, and they're the ones that change it.
Yeah, that was an eye-opener for me. The chapter, the customer is the product. Because when you get all the way out to transformation and you say you're talking about outcomes, the outcomes that you are after in a transformational experience, I don't know if I'm layering those wrong, but anyway, in a transformation is yourself. You are the product that you're developing.
Right, exactly. Because that's all that matters. It doesn't matter all these physical things you give them. It doesn't matter the activities you do. It doesn't matter the experiences they undergo unless they achieve the aspiration that they want, that they have.
There's two things that really seem to drive these trends. One thing that you describe is our ability to produce them changes, the technology changes, all of that stuff. But the other thing is that the market changes, and that the market has an increasing expectation for a higher level of service, and that's the only thing that they're going to pay for, and that they're going to pay the most for. And frequently, it's an order of magnitude more each time you go up one of these steps.
Exactly.
So I want to talk about work as one of these things. This is something that we go to receive from the company that we work for. And the market has changed in the last few years, which is all of a sudden it's broken open into a lot more customization about where you're going to work and things like that. And I'm wondering if you agree that that's a trend, if you think that this falls into the same pattern or not.
Absolutely is a trend. It absolutely does follow in the same pattern. If you think back to, again, Henry Ford's time when mass production was the paragon of how one did things, whether you're a goods business or a services business, people were merely cogs in the wheel of the machine. It was a machine that went on and they would be happy just to mechanize you and automate you out of existence if they could do it. And it worked very effectively when we could predict demand and so forth, when we would subsume our individual desires to get something we could afford, because bespoke cars, only the rich could afford at the time. And Henry Ford made it that all people could afford them. And that is a huge benefit to society. Mass production was one of the greatest gifts to society ever invented because it allowed the masses to truly afford things that otherwise only the rich could afford. It really democratized that. But it treated people like cogs. And in the service economy, sort of only cared about the activities that they did. But in the experience economy, again, whether or not you're an experience changer, the fact that we are all immersed in all the experiences, we want experiences in our lives, we do not want to separate that out and say, okay, work is drudgery and I only live to play when I get done, right? No, we need to make work non-drudgery. We need to make work not just not toil, but in fact, ideally a joy. I don't know about you, Dart, but I get joy out of my work. I love what I do. And I hope that everybody does as well, no matter what their role is. And as companies, we need to provide that. And particularly when you get to the transformation side, it also gets a lot into purpose. We need meaning out of work. I mean, as a human being, we need meaning out of work. Yes, we can get by, and if we don't have it, but our lives are so much richer and we flourish so much more as human beings when we get meaning, not just out of life and family and God, but out of the work that we do. And so companies can do that, particularly when they themselves have a meaningful purpose that aligns everything they do and guides everything they do. When that meaningful purpose aligns with your individual purpose, right, that's when work becomes joy.
And here's the thing, in the experience economy, you have a graph, and it shows the rate of change of the value of different parts of the economy. And so essentially the goods and services economy has been flat or down, and the experience economy has been sloping up. The transformation economy is even steeper, right, in terms of the prices. And it crossed my mind, maybe that's because the very wealthy can afford the experiences. And as our economy splits into the very wealthy and then people who are struggling, that part of what we're seeing is that the experiences are going up in cost. And the reason I bring this up is that if I'm selling work to you and I'm thinking about what level of work I should give you, should I give you it as a service? Should I give you it as an experience? Should I give it as a transformation? Should I only invest in it as an employer as a transformation if you're a premium customer? And what I mean by that is the kind of customer I can't afford to lose and the one that's going to give me the most value. I don't know what the or is in that, but it's basically, can only a part of the economy afford those?
I don't think that's correct. I think that there are levels of goods, services, experiences, and even transformations that can happen at all levels of the economy, at all socioeconomic levels. There are certainly some that are premium, and as you go up, the increase in cost is going to be even higher because people can afford it otherwise, but you can get there anyway. In experiences, right? So I may not be able to afford to take my family to Disney World, but I can go to a Six Flags amusement park. Right? If I can't go to Six Flags amusement park, guess what? I can go to McDonald's Playland, right? And I can spend a couple hours in there letting the kids play and for free, basically, because I bought a meal. And it's not just about premium; it is about finding the value. And you remind me too when you talk about the pricing of this. I actually wrote an article, an op-ed for the Wall Street Journal a year ago, January, and it was just as everybody's talking about all the inflation raging and everything. And I made the point that we tend to think of inflation as only a result of cost increases. That my supply chain is blocked up, and so I can't get things, and I got to pay more to be able to get things. Therefore, I have to raise my prices. Or my employees, I can't get my employees; they've gone off and they're at home, and I can't get them to work, and I got to pay my premium because I got to wear a mask and all of this, and so my labor costs will go up, and therefore my price has to go up. But I pointed out that often what we call inflation and what the government calls inflation is in fact value going up for the customer and their willingness to pay more. And I use the quintessential example of Walt Disney, right? And I compare, it's one of the things we do in the book too, but you can compare the prices of a ticket to Walt Disney, how much it costs per day versus the normal CPI. And it goes up tremendously. It's like 1.8 times every year, higher than the, or 0.8, 0.018, 1.8% higher every year than the CPI. And it's not because their labor costs are going up. It's not because their cost to build a ride goes up. It's because there's demand and people value this more highly than other experiences because they're the world's premier experience stager. So a lot of that, it's the same thing. Like what are the two industries? Now there's two reasons for this, but what I'm talking about is one of them. What are the two industries that have increased the most in pricing in the last 3 decades? Any idea?
I actually do have I think I read it in the book. One of them was healthcare overall, which landed in the transformative bucket. What's the other one?
And the other one also in the transformative bucket, higher education. Tuition prices have gone up huge, right? Now, both of them have non-market reasons for that, which is in education, the government subsidizes the price of education, and therefore they don't have to discount in order to get it because it's being subsidized basically. And if the government stopped doing that, tuition would be lower. And the same with healthcare, you've got the basic problem that who should be the customer, the patient, is not the customer, it's the insurance companies that are the customer. And you got all this dislocations of value because of that. But in part, it is because we value them more highly, right? They're healthy, wealthy, and wise. Again, so that's where value is going. So people are willing to pay more. On the transformation end, we talked about, yes, you can go to Bali. I just yesterday got this example of this company in Bali called Revivo that have this wellness thing. And before you can book it, I think it was, they ask you 80 questions to be able to customize exactly what happens. And I'm sure it's like tens of thousands of dollars to go there for a week or two. But you can also go to, remember the YMCA? You can still go to the YMCA and use their gym equipment for a low monthly membership that most people can't afford. There's always something at every socioeconomic. You can always buy a self-help book and just do it off of there if you want and be your own general contractor for your transformation.
Here's a question. As we go up the stack, does the amount of co-creation, the balance of co-creation between customer and provider, does it change?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, so one, obviously, if you're mass producing a good or a service, and even an experience, there's no co-creation. That's one of the things they long said about Disney. I did a lot of work with Disney for a number of years and talked about the fact that you are a mass experience. You're not doing anything based on who this individual customer is. And you need to get more customized. And that's just the way the direction is going. And that work helped lead to the Magic Band, where they can actually identify who each individual customer is and start to do things differently for them. So all experiences are co-created. All experience, even the mass ones are, right? Just not much, but even the mass ones are, because where do experiences happen? They happen inside of us. Exactly. It's our reaction to the events that are staged in front of us. So we co-create our experience. If you and I, Dart, go to the same place at the same time, have the same experience, we're going to rate it differently. It's going to be different experiences for us because of who we are as individuals, our past experiences, how we've been primed for the event, our mood that day, all of those things different. But what customization allows you to do is get more and more co-creation as you go about. So commodities, goods, services exist outside of us, but experiences happen inside of us, and transformations change us from the inside out. So they are necessarily, again, more and more co-created.
Yeah. So much of them are the finished product is, let's say, the last 50% of the finished product happens inside us in a transformation. And also their hard work. I mean, if you don't come with the will to actually transform and contribute your part to it. Before we started recording, you had said that you disagree with my positioning that work is a product that employees are customers. And I want to know which part you disagree with, because it might be the word product and it might be the word customer, and I'm not sure which it is.
All right, so we'll start with the word product. So product has one of two meanings. Product means either a physical good, it's the industrial economy, Ford made product, mass produces products. Or it can mean generically any offering, what I like to call an economic offering, in which case it could be a product, could be a commodity, a good, service, experience, or a transformation. So just sometimes I'll use that both ways as well. I've got this matrix that's called the 2x2 by many people, the product process matrix, because that was its original name. Never wanted to turn it, but I recognize, well, the product doesn't have to be goods as it originally was. It can be any one of the economic offerings. So that's just a normal of just define your terms and understand what you mean. So the issue I have is with employees as customers, and I'm open to this. My original thought, and I thought this way when the first time I heard it, 30 years ago, when people started talking to employees as customers, is that words really matter. And if you call them a customer, you're going to treat them differently. And that's what you want to have happen. You want to treat them differently. And what I'm afraid of, then you lose sight of who the real customer is. Because if you look up dictionary definition of customer, what's the customer? The customer is the one who's paying you money. Obviously, employees aren't paying you money.
I'm going to disagree on this point, and it's partially because I'm redefining the word customer.
Well, see, there you go. We got to redefine it.
Okay, but here's why. A customer is someone who exchanges value with your enterprise. I'm changing it from money to value, and is free not to, which is they're free to walk away. And it's free on a couple levels, free to take the job, free to leave the job, so there's freedom there.
Yep. What's the term, quietly quit?
Right. Well, and actually, I also refer to it as the attention tax, the inattention tax, which is, I want to work, I want to do good work, but if my work is boring, I simply am incapable of paying attention to it the way I should. So in a multi-sided business, one side of the business is the revenue side of the business that's actually giving revenue. Let's take ad-based media, where you're watching TV, you're watching ads. The other side of the business is actually not revenue generating directly, and yet you invest enormously in their experience because you want them to be there as a viewing audience. And so is somebody who's consuming ad-based media, are they a customer? I'd argue they are, because they're exchanging value, which is eyeballs.
Yeah. So that's an interesting perspective. I like where you're going in terms of it makes sense.
Always a good start.
Right. But the example you just gave is like, no, they're not the customer, they're the product. It's their eyeballs that are the product of what they're really after. And this is part of what I mean by when you start using terms in a different way, then bad things happen, right? And one of the bad things that happened with TV, for example, is where it became purely advertising motivated, and where the customer or the viewer is the product being sold to advertisers. Instead of, again, coming up with an admission feed or membership feed offering, which now we see with streaming services, right? Well, now I'm paying a membership fee to belong to Netflix or Paramount Plus or Amazon Prime or HBO, et cetera. And now, guess what? They do things differently because of that, and particularly get rid of ads. Now, of course, they're recognizing, well, but we might be able to make more money if we did have an ad-supported thing. And what I actually like that they do that, because now customers actually have that option. It's not free, it's still a lesser amount. And now they know what they're paying for. They're still a customer because they're still paying, but they know what they're giving up in terms of that. I value no advertising much, much too highly to do that.
I completely agree. And I'll tell you how this word, just hanging up on the word customer. I interviewed Jeff Parker, who is one of the people he's at Dartmouth, who put the math behind multi-sided businesses.
Right, platform revolution.
Exactly. And he just got around it by just calling both ends of the business a user. And so, if you were a platform and you had developers on one side and you had, people who were going to use the apps on the other side, he called them users. And it's partially because we kept getting wrapped around the axle around the word customer.
Of course, users are the generic word for customers of manufacturers. but you on a multi-sided platform, you can see that. And going back to employees as customers, while I intellectually rebel at it, I have seen it work. I have seen it made a difference. And I assume you can tell me about all these other examples of where it is, in fact, better for the company if they view them as customers. I would say, I'm not sure that you couldn't have the same change happen, the same good benefits happen by viewing them as with an enlightened view of what an employee is, which is not a cog in the wheel. But some people may need that sense of the term customer. The fact that you say that there is work product, well, yes, certainly there's work product, but the work product is in fact what the employees do for customers. So bottom line is, I wouldn't say there's anything intellectually dishonest, that there isn't necessarily anything bad, that it can in fact be a lot of good, as long as you ensure that the end customer, the one who's paying you the money, the one that is funding the entire company, is still kept in mind and thought more highly of than the internal customers.
Yeah, I accept that. And there's a part to this, which is one of the things that you mentioned, is that if you end up in the mass production business, you end up in the price business. As you move up the chain toward experience, you end up in the value business, in the value creation business. Well, if we extend this metaphor into work, what I pay you is, it may be a negative number, but let's see if I can say this right. If I'm giving you a terrible experience as somebody who works for me, the only real choice I have to do is to buy you. In other words, I have to pay more for you for that horrible experience.
Exactly.
There was a study done a little while ago, quite a while ago, where they took the scientists leaving academia who were going into private business, and they looked at the companies that allowed them to publish versus the ones that didn't. And they got paid more at the ones that did not allow them to publish. Why? They wanted to publish. That's a part of what they wanted from work. And so if you were going to go work for that company, they had to pay you more. But if you could go to a company where they'd let you publish, they could pay you less. And so there's a way in which, if you do it wrong, you end up in the price business.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There is value we get out of work, and it absolutely affects the amount of money we're willing to accept for it, which is the same with customers. If you clothing manufacturers, because they're mass producers and can't do forecasting well because it's impossible to do forecasting well, right? Always have leftover clothing at the end of the year. And what they do, they put it on fire sale. And they put it on fire sale because they say, we didn't create value enough for you to buy this at regular price, so we're going to have to discount it and make it less price. And you, by the way, will also have to sacrifice because it won't be exactly what you want, or you would have bought it before. So it's the same thing with employees. And again, it bolsters your point about treating them as customers, because you do have to pay more for drudgery work, pay less for joyful work.
Yes. Let's actually talk about the management philosophy that goes with experience, because it's a different management philosophy that goes with this more agile and more bespoke kind of delivery. What has to change in terms of the management philosophy?
There are a number of things. You have to change the core mindset. The core mindset of mass producers and industrial production is push, right? We're going to make something, or we're going to push it out there until somebody buys it. And with mass customization and with experiences, it's pull. You want to pull from the customers what they understand and then do something for them. And it's less targeting them and enticing them, right, with an experience. Even how you market should be with marketing experiences that entice people to want to learn more about your product and your whatever it may be, and your company, and buy from you. The other key thing I'll mention is, functional silos of mass production, which turned into horizontal teams of continuous improvement with mass customization, are modular, right? And that's one of the things we need to do as well, is we need to make our organization modular, less silos, whether they're vertical or horizontal, and more modular, where you can bring people as individual capabilities, as a bundle of things that they can do, and apply them to the right need at the right moment to create the right offering for the right customer. You're right there, right then. That's the goal. I'm also working with a colleague, Kim Korn, on ideas on what managing needs to be. And this would be a good conversation to have. It's not quite ready for prime time, but we're very close. And what Kim names it as is regenerative managing. So we need to manage in a regenerative way that regenerates the advantage of the corporation over time. That instead, what always happens is that if you look at a company that it rises up and it's founded and it does all this stuff and it rises up and it creates all this, it's innovative, creates all this value, and then it slowly dissipates that over time and becomes mediocre and eventually fails, right? Just a pattern that you see. And then sometimes you can forestall that failing when some heroic leader comes in, Jack Welch at GE and so forth, and sparks things, and you get a lot of innovation. It goes back up, but then comes back down again over time. It's the natural thing because the ecosystem of any company tends to be more innovative than it is. It's Joseph Schumpeter's Gales of Creative Destruction. That's just what goes on. So how do you regenerate the company? How do you vitalize it in a way that instead of falling down into mediocrity, eventually failing, that it can in fact thrive forever? And there's a number of, we went back to first principles rather than argue by anecdotal. Look at that successful company. It does it this way. Look at that successful company. It does it that way. And try and figure out all these principles, which are very idiosyncratic. Instead, come to first principles about what is an enterprise, what is economic value, what is, and how do you go about creating that? And then from that, develop a set of imperatives for this is what a company must do. And the one I'll mention is one we already talked about, is it needs to create a meaningful purpose. And if you don't have a meaningful purpose, you're never going to be able to keep people aligned and involved and engaged enough, again, everything you try and do over long term, that eventually the people become disengaged and so forth. So that meaningful purpose aligns with everybody does. So you don't have to command and control what they do. They know, right? Does this fit in with the purpose of the company or not?
I draw a connection here to a little bit to the work of Fred Reichheld, who was also on the show and talked about value extraction as a business practice versus value generation, which is that value generation includes the value you create in your customer. The long-term loyalty is there. And this reminds me a little bit of that, which is that you can be extractive with your workforce as well, which is you can extract value without allowing it to regenerate. I wonder how you regenerate it. What do you do? I guess we're going to have to wait for that book.
Yes, and we're have to wait for the next conversation that we have, Dart, to be able to get into that. But what Reichheld's talking about is classic economically. It's explore and exploit. So we'll end with this, right? Is that what companies tend to do is they exploit the advantage they currently have, and eventually that goes away as others disrupt and innovate. But you also need to have explore. You need to be out there innovating, exploring new things. And a lot of companies have that, but exploit starves explore. They don't like it. They want to get rid of it. They want to keep doing the same things they've always done, ideally. And so that's where Kim says what we need is to orchestrate. We need to orchestrate these things together in a way that allows us, yes, to take advantage of what we already know how to do, but yet not starve the innovation that we need to have to continue to have a business that exists into the future.
It's a real systems dynamics problem, which is that you're on a local optimum, right? You're climbing the mountain of nearby value, and you're way up on the mountain because you're a leader in that, whatever that is. It's very hard to start climbing another mountain, and how you allocate budget it's very challenging to do that. I have a wrap-up question here. You've been in the sort of the paradigm shifting business for a long time. Words of wisdom to others in the paradigm, subverting the paradigm business.
Great question. I go right back to mindset, right? You've got to change the mindset, which changes vocabulary, which changes behavior. And you can change any one of those, change the other two. But the easiest one is to change the mindset first, to get the aha, to make people to realize that this is the direction we're going. It's disruptive to everything that's going on. And it helps to have a framework. What I specialize in is developing frameworks that first describe what's happening and then prescribe what companies can do about it. And that's why the progression of economic value, the product process matrix, all these frameworks can really help you see, there is something else out there. There is more possibility. And to be able to say, okay, that's the direction we're heading.
Yeah, I'll tell you, a lot of the diagrams in your books I can see in my head, and I remembered them probably within 30 seconds. They made sense, and I was ready to go.
Super.
Absolutely. I can literally see them in my head.
All right.
Well, look, thank you so much for coming in and talking today. was a lot of fun.
All right, Dart. It was a pleasure. I look forward to doing it again.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of Work for Humans. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a 5-star rating wherever you listen to podcasts. And share the show with one person you think would get value from it. Believe it or not, this really helps us grow the show and reach more people who want to build the kind of work that people really want. As always, thank you to my producer, Jason Ames at Ninth Path Audio for his insights into content and his high standard for quality. Final note, the opinions shared here are my own and not the views of Google or Cisco Systems. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.